you quit. You've had enough. In before 8 a.m., staying past 8 p.m., you're done. But you can't quite quit yet because your job is still your livelihood. You still have to pay for the house, you still have to pay for your kids' education, you have to pay for your lifestyle, so what do you do instead? You remember an article that you read in the New York Times and a trend that you're seeing on the TikTok. Instead of quitting, you decide to quiet quit. Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. My name's John of John's Finance Tips. On today's video, we're gonna talk about the concept of quiet quitting. Specifically, what is it, why people are doing it, should you or should you not doing it, and of course, my thoughts on how you can coexist with or as a quiet quitter. So, what is quiet quitting? Surprisingly, it's not as simple as the question of whether or not water is wet. You'd be surprised to find out that quiet quitting isn't just quitting your job outright. In fact, all quiet quitters are 100% employed. Rather, quiet quitters are quitting on the idea of the corporate hustle. Instead of coming in before 8 a.m., staying past 8 p.m., all in the hopes of climbing that corporate ladder that much faster than their peers, quiet quitters tend to show up at 9 a.m. and leave by 5 p.m. They do all of their necessary job functions and duties, and they go home on time to their families. And they tend to prioritize their personal life just as much as their work life. I know, you're probably thinking that's a crazy concept, but in an alternate reality, that's also known as doing your job. So the next question then is, why are people quiet quitting? Or in other words, why are people doing just their job? And if you think that's a weird question, that's because it is. Well, in the United States, there is just this incredible hustle culture. From the minute you graduate college, it is basically work till you go 6 feet under. You climb that corporate ladder all in the hopes that you get the promotion, you get the raise, and you make a ton of money. I'm gonna pause here and say, yes, in the United States, you're gonna make more money than pretty much anywhere else in the world, but at what cost? Well, the costs are the three following, and that, I think, is what's contributing to people quiet quitting. Reason one, burnout. I don't think it's too hard to see. Over the past 2 or 3 years, our working lives and our personal lives have coexisted in one place very closely, especially those who were able to remote work and hybrid work. And so because of that, I feel like there was building this atmosphere of almost a 24/7 always on approach to work. And with work life kind of creeping slowly into people's personal lives, we saw an increased rate of burnout. Now, especially amongst Gen Zs and millennials who reported feelings of burnout close to 60%. Reason number two why people are quiet quitting, work-life balance. It's not hard to see over the past couple years with people who especially had the opportunity to remote work and hybrid work, they could maybe do some chores during the weekday, just run out and run an errand instead of having to save Saturdays and Sundays to do that. And so freeing up time, they had better work-life balance, and guess what? They liked it. And so this current quiet quitting trend is probably just a rebuke to the previous hustle culture in which, hey, listen, I like my work-life balance, I still got my job done, so why can't I continue doing that? 3, the American dream is dead. It's not hard to look around and see prices for everything the past couple years have been through the roof, aka inflation. Home prices are still crazy now. They've come down a little bit, but they're still crazy inflated. Wages just aren't keeping up with the cost of goods, and so suddenly that picturesque white picket fence in a middle-class suburb with a new car and raising your 2 kids, that dream just seems out of reach. So then what's the point of showing up to the corporate job, grinding 80 hours a week, and still not being able to attain just quite that? So we talked about 3 reasons as to why people are quiet quitting. Now here are 3 reasons of why you probably shouldn't consider quiet quitting. Reason number 1, recession 2023. Folks, it has been a wild year this year, but all the signals coming from the federal government to corporate executives are indicating that in 2023, there is likely going to be a recession. In fact, if you ask certain people, they would actually say we're in a recession now, and somehow recession is left up to the government to determine anyway. All I'm trying to say is quiet quitting, basically a period in which coasting tends to make sense, that time might be behind us. If we look at the tech sector, for example, Twitter, Amazon, Facebook, they are all laying people off. And so if you're quiet quitting and just coasting along, you might be on the chopping block sooner than you would have planned for. In addition to that, bond yields have been inverted for some time, and that has been one of the more reliable correlations to recessions in the past. Reason 2, you might stunt your career growth. Folks, it's not hard for managers to see who is putting in the hours and who is not. In fact, there are some tech companies who quite literally measure productivity by keystrokes. They take a look at what keystrokes are registered on your computer, and they somehow say, okay, you're more productive because you did more. Now, that's an argument for another day, but regardless, companies are tracking productivity, and it's very easy for your frontline managers to be able to see who's producing and who is not. And in the world of quiet quitting, it might be all too easy to go from a place of complacency to lack of productivity as compared to your peers. And that can seriously impact your ability to progress through your career. The third reason, it's just a little bit selfish. There are certain teams in which if you aren't pulling your weight and then a little bit more, you might actually be putting workload onto someone else and making them do more. For example, working in a tech sales capacity, when we're closing a deal, there are all hands on deck. Everywhere from sales support to sales engineers, in addition to the sales rep. But if one of those groups are maybe just coasting for a deal that's supposed to come in this quarter, where we need all hands on deck and a little bit of extra oomph, that deal might not close, and it actually might end up costing a company some revenue. Is that the case everywhere? No, absolutely not. But for people against quiet quitting, that's one of the examples they cite in which you not going a little bit above and beyond might actually be putting extra workload onto some of your coworkers inadvertently. So we covered the why, I talked about the why not. Now let me share with you my thoughts on quiet quitting. I've got 3. 1. What is the point of giving your heart and soul to a company or organization that would just as easily replace you drop of a dime? We think we're irreplaceable. We think we are so crucial to the company. But in which job have you ever had after say a month or 2 months of leaving that they tap you on the shoulder and say, oh my gosh, John, please come back. We desperately need you. No, absolutely not. You're replaceable. In fact, in the United States, we're employed at will. Now, as long as it's not discriminatory, we could be fired like that. So for me, when I think about it, why would I go into a place and just dedicate so much time, effort, energy, taking time away from my family, my friends, my personal life to advance a corporate mission that is largely what? Just generating revenue? And at the end of the day, that revenue doesn't even come back to me. That revenue goes to the corporation and I just kind of get my salary. Basically, what I'm trying to say is you, me, and everyone we know, we're really all just largely a cog in the corporate wheel. And so if we quiet quit, aren't we just doing our jobs to ensure that the machine keeps running? Why is it that the machine has to go above and beyond at 110 or 120%? After all, folks, in the human resources space, there is software to manage people, HR software. It's called human capital management. Capital, as in capital equipment, but in fact, it's human capital management. My second thought, there are just industries and firms that are up or out. Basically, if you are not producing and climbing up that ladder, basically overproducing, right, committing your 70, 80, 100-hour work weeks, you're out of a job. 2 that come to mind, investment banking as well as big law. In those particular job sectors, you're just gonna have to do the work and then some, and that is the expectation. So if you come in and start quiet quitting and coasting, you might be out of a job sooner than you would have planned. So I would certainly not recommend for folks in those industries to kind of kick back and say, you know what, I'm here just to cruise, because you can't. You're either going up or you're out. But for everyone else, if you come in, do your job, and the company is still functioning, what's the problem? My third thought, let's rebrand this whole thing. Quiet quitting, I feel like, has such a negative connotation, right? Why are you quitting on your job? When in fact, all it is just doing your job. We should rather relabel this as something like I've seen called acting your wage. Come in, I do my job that you pay me to do, and I am out of here. Because again, at the end of the day, this quiet quitting concept is nothing new. Gallup released a poll that said about 50% of workers are quiet quitting. But if you look around, are things falling from the sky? Has all of corporate America completely imploded on itself? No, absolutely not. Another way to look at quiet quitting are that workers are just simply not engaged. And that's always been a problem in the workforce. It's just that this generation has come up with a new term for it that's a little bit more buzzier. But at the end of the day, I say we just rebrand it. Let's call it acting your wage, and we could just normalize that conversation a little bit. Folks, we've made it to the end of the video. Hopefully you took something away. Now, here are 3 alternative things that you could do that don't involve quiet quitting. Number 1, and I think this might be the case, is that people don't feel like they're getting compensated appropriately for the job they're doing. And so they're just coasting because, well, hey, you're not gonna pay me to do more, why would I do more? Well, I say to that, why not just go and ask for a raise? Have the conversation with your direct manager, whoever it is, as to why you should be compensated more. Come with the data, come with your performance metrics, come with market data, and ask for that raise, because at the end of the day, I'll guarantee if you've been at a company for 5 or 6 years, you're probably getting underpaid anyway. So get a true up to your raise. Number 2, look for a job somewhere else. Seriously, again, I think the crux of quiet quitting largely comes to the fact that people don't feel like they're being compensated fairly. And so most people, if you take a look at it, when you job hop, you'll get a 20, 30% pay bump. And people who job hop versus their peers who don't tend to make so much more in their working careers. And so the other thing you could do now, again, even though the job market has slowed slightly for certain sectors, it is still a pretty quote unquote hot market. So I would say look for a job that is paying you more. And number 3, side hustle. Again, it comes to the dollars and cents. Is there something that you can do on the side that's gonna add additional revenue? And so, hey, listen, you're quiet quitting, but you're also kind of up in the revenue, and maybe your side hustle can replace your main hustle, and you could quit instead of quiet quit, and you're onto greener pastures. Not saying that's always the case, but I would say most people, myself included, if I'm thinking about quiet quitting, it's largely because I'm not getting compensated correctly. And so if I'm not gonna ask for a raise, if I'm not gonna look for another job, then is there a side hustle I can pick up that I can add to my main hustle? Side hustles could vary from gig economy to looking at rental real estate to the creator economy. There are so many options out there. Now, of course, appreciate you all for sticking around through this video. If you're interested in any side hustle ideas, I think I've got a video up here linked above, and I will catch you all next time. Peace.